Warm welcome to this information session on the Asia business trends in the year of the snake and on the Asialink Leaders Program 2025. My name is Lotta Oberg. I am the program director of our flagship Asialink Leaders Program, and I look forward to hosting this session with you today. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians on all of the lands we meet virtually on. I pay my respects to the Gadigal of the Eora Nation and pay that respect to Aboriginal elders past, present, and emerging, as well as Aboriginal people on the call session today. So, today you have joined us to learn more about these two things. And here is what we have in store for you. You are going to be hearing from Robert Law, our General Manager, New South Wales, and Director, Advisory and Insights for Asialink Business, who will share key takeaways from the just released business trends in the year of the snake report. He will also continue to do so in conversation with Ken Uy, a lawyer who's working in the digital infrastructure space for a global organization covering APAC. And we're delighted that Ken has joined to share his own personal views and perspectives from his position in the region. And then Ken and I will continue that conversation about the Asialink Leaders Program and what that can do to help you navigate our fast-changing region. So I am really delighted that you can join us today and to get informed and to get excited about what lies ahead. So thank you for taking the time out to do so. Just a point of order, your questions are actually welcome throughout, and you can see a Q&A box in the chat. Please feel free to use that at any time, but we'll also invite you to do so for a very short bit of Q&A at the end. If you're viewing this as a recording, then you'll find contact details at the end too to ask questions from us. So with that, I would like to now hand over to you, Robert Law, Director of Advisory and Insights, to share with us the trends.
Thanks so much, Lotta. Delighted to be here, and a warm welcome to everyone joining this webinar. And I'm really excited to be discussing these trends with Ken. He's joining us in a personal capacity today, but he's a very experienced corporate lawyer based in Singapore and has worked across Australia, China, Singapore, and has really great visibility across the whole region. So we don't have a lot of time, so I think we should get straight into it. But just to give you quick background on our business trends in the year of the snake, we do this report every year, and the idea is to have it as a bit of a thought starter for businesses so they can look ahead and make sense of the world that might be coming to them when it comes to Asia and business. This year, we surveyed over 100 business and government leaders, and you'll see the results on the next slides. So if we go to the first slide, we asked what were the top challenges that businesses thought they would face in 2025. And by the way, respondents were allowed to pick multiple options, so that's why the numbers there don't sum to 100. No surprise there to see geopolitical risks at the top. Probably a little more surprising to see competition. That's not often something that gets a lot of coverage in the media. And rounding out the top three is regulatory and compliance complexities. Ken, how do those look for you from where you are in Singapore? Does that sort of broadly track with the challenges that you're seeing and hearing?
Yeah, certainly on the geopolitical risks and changes in trade positions, Trump's tariffs and trade restrictions, it's definitely prompting businesses in Asia to reassess supply chains and mitigate some of those risks. And on the competition point, I think it's just the inherent market here in Asia. It's a very competitive region. It's a growing population. And because of that, there's lots of businesses, both local and international, that are looking to compete for that market share, particularly in some of these more competitive sectors like e-commerce, fintech, AI. And then regulatory as well is another key point that I think is creating complexity. It's not just one country. Asia's made up of a number of different regions, and those regulations and compliance risks are very different in each of those different countries. So that's another consideration for businesses.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and it's interesting on geopolitical risk. When we dug into the numbers a little more, we saw a bit of a difference between business and government. So, around two-thirds of government respondents indicated geopolitical risk was a top challenge, but only one-third of businesses picked it. Um, that's quite interesting from my perspective. We don't quite know why. My hypothesis is that geopolitical issues are something that people in government are working on a daily basis, whereas for businesses that are a bit more focused on sort of maybe operational or regulatory issues, those geopolitical issues, they're still really important, but they're a bit more in the background. So quite interesting results there. I think the competition is a huge one. And what I'm really talking to businesses about is making sure that they don't forget that when they go into Asia, competition isn't just about other international businesses in the market. It's about the local domestic businesses who are incredibly in touch with the consumer and the client and the customer, and have this really fast speed to market, which gives them a real advantage. Ken, just on some of those other ones that are a bit lower down the list, any surprises there? I think it's probably a good thing to see supply chain disruptions drop down that list. It would have been quite higher in COVID years, but that's obviously less of a concern for businesses at the moment. But do the rest of those?
Maybe that ties a bit to the geopolitical risks, though. There's certainly some trade restrictions and tariffs that have made people think about different ways to source products. At least that's
Yeah,
what I'm hearing from speaking with some other lawyers who work in the trade space.
yeah, that's probably a good point. And this big shift that's happened in the supply chain world from just in time to just in case has had some benefits. It's put some more cost into the bottom line of businesses, but it's also had some benefits in terms of creating more resilience, which comes in handy in the environment that we're facing. All right, let's move on to the next question that we asked, and this was around the opportunities. It was around what are the greatest growth drivers that businesses see in the region. I think the top two really stand out for me, but why don't I go to you, Ken? What are you seeing as the key growth drivers?
Yeah, I definitely see digital economy as a huge growth market. You spoke previously about local expertise and international companies wanting to come in, but speed to market being an advantage for local companies. And when I go to the local supermarket, Fair Price, they've actually got a Coles section there where you can buy Coles home brand products. And if you look at Redmart, which is an online grocery platform that's run by Lazada, Woolworths has a dedicated section on that website. So I think partnership is one way that foreign companies are looking to come into local markets and take advantage of the existing local knowledge.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a big one, and payments is a big one as well, right? So, I think sometimes people are surprised when they learn that half of global real-time payments occur in India, and the advances that we've seen in payments infrastructure and methods of payment in Asia in the last few years have been truly incredible. Consumer demand, you're obviously seeing that all around you. That's a big growth opportunity that we've talked about a lot. Will we see that come through this year?
I think people have been talking about the rising middle class and population growth here in Asia for many years, but I think it's really coming to fruition now. There's, if you look around when you travel to Indonesia, there's a population of almost 300 million people there, and everyone's a very large proportion of that are digitally savvy, and they're buying things online. They're using these payment apps that you're talking about. So I think it's a really exciting time to be doing business here in Asia.
Hmm. And some interesting results a little further down the list. Energy transition, still a strong result in terms of 25% of respondents saw it as an opportunity and a growth driver, but a bit lower down. The same with ESG and sustainability. And I think in previous years, those two have always sort of featured really, strongly in terms of where businesses saw the opportunities. I think it's worth noting we did this survey after Trump had been elected as president. So perhaps what's coming through there is people reflecting a bit of the sentiment coming out of the US and maybe sort of seeing a little less opportunity in that space in Asia in 2025. But any other ones stand out for you there, Ken?
AI for me, I think, is a real standout. You're probably seeing the same thing in Australia, but AI is no longer just a buzzword. It's something that's being actively integrated into everyday business operations. I talk to friends that work in law, it's being used there for things like document review. I speak to friends who are working in advertising, and I've got friends who are using that for content generation, or people who work in banks and who are using AI for ways to communicate with customers. So in my mind, it's not a question of whether businesses will adopt AI, it's how they will integrate it strategically to drive efficiency and maintain a competitive edge.
Yeah, I think that's really key. And, I think when we talk about AI, we often get caught up in or really focused on, the AI competition between China and the US. And that's a really important story. But there's another story that's playing out around AI, around the localization of AI in Asian markets. And, particularly now that we're seeing cheaper large language models come to market, I think we'll see more and more localized applications across the region. We're also seeing the growth of large language models in local languages. So I think 2025 will be the year where AI goes local in Asia. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And there we asked about, which markets are most attractive for businesses in 2025. The top ones were all really closely clustered together. So you can see number one is India, followed closely by Vietnam, Indonesia, and then China. Singapore's in there, but often Singapore is as much, about a window to the broader region, a launching pad to the broader region. In your conversations, are those the sort of top markets that people are talking about?
Yeah, I think so. I previously worked in private practice as a lawyer, and we were supporting the APAC region. And we definitely saw a lot of activity out of Indonesia, Vietnam, and I think India was obviously a huge place for potential, as you've just mentioned. So yeah, I think I'm quite privileged, I guess, sitting in Singapore because it's a bit of a hub. It's where a lot of foreign companies will come and set up their regional offices to do business in these different regions. So yeah, I can definitely see those markets you've got there as very attractive markets.
Yeah, and I think the common thing across at least the first three markets, India, Vietnam, and Indonesia, is they're all high growth markets. And so, yes, they are emerging markets, but they're high growth emerging markets. And I think that is obviously very attractive when in other parts of the world growth is a bit slower. The fourth one there, China, it is growing a bit slower compared to how it's gone historically. It's still quite fast. It's up towards 5%, so it's still quite fast, and it's also a huge market. And so, yeah, there've been challenges in the relationship between Australia and China in previous years on the political side, but clearly the sentiment out there among businesses is that they still see a big opportunity in China. So, but of course, there's plenty of other markets. And what I say to everyone always is, make sure that the market you choose is really appropriate for your company and your product and service. So take the time to understand what your point of comparative advantage is before choosing to go into a particular market. So look, Ken, really useful to get your views on these trends and what we were hearing. Of course, all of that means that I think we're facing a pretty complex, fast-changing and challenging region. There's a lot of opportunity, but there are challenges. And I think it's really important that people make sure they're prepared for that region and the opportunity. And one way to do that is through the Asialink Leaders Program. So I invite Lotta to come back. Lotta, just to join the conversation with Ken to talk a little bit more about the program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. And yes, shifting from the fast changing realities and uncertainties in the region to the capabilities needed. And of course, Ken, you, as we have said it before, you have lived in Australia, in Singapore, in Shanghai, in Beijing, and worked across these markets and more. So you joined the Asialink Leaders Program in 2022. So you have a little bit of hindsight as well. And we'd love to hear, how has that experience equipped you or impacted you in terms of how you navigate these rapid changes and opportunities around you?
Yeah, sure. So maybe just to step back, my background is I'm an Australian lawyer. Always had a very strong interest in Asia. So I was quite motivated by the program and the insights that it offered into business, the economic situation, the political landscape. So joining this program really gave me all those things. It gave me very much a regional mindset, gave me an understanding of the importance of Asia as a diverse, multifaceted region and not just a singular market. Another thing it really gave me was a network. A very valuable takeaway was connecting with professionals across a range of industries, not just the sort of little silo that I sat in the legal profession. It's also government, finance, tech, trade, even the arts sector. So I think having that network, having those connections is really instrumental in being able to navigate the market complexities and just pick up the phone and call connections to get trusted local insights.
Great to hear. And one of the things that I think was very interesting about your journey through the program and your journey through the year was that was a year of relocation for you. So you would join us in person, and then we saw you in what we now have our virtual hub. So you got access to different modes and different networks. And I'm curious to hear, what did that do for you in terms of keeping the channel back to Australia, but also maybe expanding your network in the region?
Yeah, I love the experience. Meeting people in Australia and going through the program face to face was great, but equally being through joining the program through the virtual hub was also fantastic. And going through this program with people and then meeting them in person eventually after the end of the program was just great. I guess a lot of people have experienced this through the COVID experience where we've met people virtually and then finally met them in person a few months later. But that was definitely my experience, getting to build relationships with people both in Australia and then virtually, and then actually getting to meet these people in the region, which was just fantastic.
That's great to hear. And of course, we are also delighted to have alumni like you leading in the region, not just an ear to the ground, but a generous person who engage with others. So I'm going to share a little bit more with the group who's here about the Asialink Leaders Program, and then we're going to come back for Q&A. So I see that questions might have started to come in, and you can keep going because we're going to have 5 minutes for them. But Ken, do you have a thought or an advice for people who are thinking, should I dedicate myself to something like this year, the year of the snake?
I think so. It's a really enjoyable program. I think you'll get a lot out of it, both professionally and personally. From a personal point of view, you'll get to meet some really great people, and from a professional point of view, you get to learn leadership skills, broaden your mindset, get some strategic thinking. It's just a great program to be involved with. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Very kind of you to say, and we're of course delighted to hear it. With that, Ken, I'm going to share a little bit more about the program, and you're going to come back in a moment when we do Q&A. But I know that many of you who've joined today have looked at the program for a while, might be considering if you're jumping in, and some of you have jumped in, applied, and even been accepted. So let me give you a snapshot of the Asialink Leaders Program 2025. This is, we think, a quite unique program that is unusual of its kind in that it is for leaders, but it is a leadership development program on Asia. So we don't know of any other program that does this in Australia or the region. And so we get an incredible group of people who are very dedicated to pursuing ambitions with Asia from across sectors. We, as you can see, are celebrating 30 years of Asia capable leadership. And that's all our alumni that can come into that fold, and we are celebrating their Asia success when we're celebrating the program. So if you were to join us, you would be in a program that's been, for the past 3 decades, at the center of the Asia-Australia connected ecosystem. And with that legacy, we can bring some of our incredible alumni like Ken Ui into the program because they are creating the future in their domains and their insights can power yours. You can also see that the cohort is quite distinct and select in a way. We're bringing around 50 leaders by application and interview to this program. And it's an incredibly diverse group. And Ken pointed out before that, you're learning across diverse sectors, but you're also meeting and connecting across the arts, business, big and small, government, politics, community, people to people, you name it. That's in the program, and that is by design. So that diversity is a strength of the program that allows for cross-pollination of ideas. It allows you to see how issues that you're experiencing engaging with the region might play out similarly or differently with someone else. And then this program journey, I'm going to show you again a snapshot of that, acknowledging, of course, that we have this in-person journey. And there's a parallel but distinct virtual hub journey for leaders in Asia and in regional rural Australia, or if you have access requirements, you can join the virtual hub. So what I can say about this overview, nuts and bolts really, of what you might experience, it is a learning journey that goes over 10 days and it's spread out over 8 months. When you're joining the in-person hub, you can see that you're actually meeting in different places across Australia. There's also virtual elements as we're used to, and there is a lot of networking going on, both in person in the cities and virtually. If you're joining us in the virtual hub, you have that similar journey, and many choose to join us in Canberra for that immersive experience. We are doing a mental map and connecting everyone in Foundation Week of Asia around your Asia engagement. We are deep diving into Australia's Asia engagement in Canberra and hearing from the voices of people who lead that engagement or influence that engagement. And then we have specific deep dives into specific topics on our intersessions. And that is probably as far as I can get in a short time about the program. But if you want to find out more detail, there's a link in the chat now. And you can go ahead and have a look at that link for our brochure, for our website, and absolutely ask us questions. But what I want to say is this. Underneath this physical journey of where you go through the program is your own journey if you're joining the Asialink Leaders Program. That journey is centered around a strategic project that you bring in to bring back benefits. And here's the magic of the program. It offers perspectives and generosity from your fellow leaders. It taps into an incredible network of expert speakers whose job is actually not usually speaking, though they are amazing speakers. It's doing Asia engagement in their sectors, its expertise in particular areas. And together with that and our alumni that come into the program more than ever in its 30th year, you can get these incredible minds and incredible connections and input for your project and position yourself as an Asia-capable leader in your organization and sector. Ken said kindly that this was also a personal rewarding experience, and we see incredible connections being made for people that inspire them to take next steps. So the number one piece to talk about is the fact that the leaders talk about when they finish the program is it was transformational for us. So I'm going to leave it there and just say that this is the time to apply because in 2 weeks we close registration, and it's just the last part of the cohort that we're now looking forward to hearing from. So if you're sitting there thinking about it, please get in touch with us. Tim McIntyre, myself, and Claire Stevens, also an alumni of the program, would love to hear from you. I'll come back to this slide just as we finish off. But now, I would in fact like to open it up for Q&A, and I'm inviting Robert and Ken back onto our here we are, back is a panel. So let's have a look at questions. And I wonder, Rob, if you would like to pick one for us.
Yeah, we've got a few coming through, Lotta. So, Ken, just to start off, there's a bit of a question around the big trends and issues that we just covered in the survey, these big geopolitical things, regulatory developments. Do they get covered in the program, and how are they covered?
That was a great question. Ken, do you want to kick us off?
I think there are different having worked as a lawyer across the region, there are different approaches to regulation in different countries, and the way things are done in practice can differ to the way things might be written if you look at things strictly. So I don't know.
Did it get covered well enough? Did you get the insights in the program when you were in the program that you were looking for around those sorts of topics? Geopolitics, politics?
Absolutely. So that we touched on a lot of those points. We heard from people who are in those countries and learnt about the way things get done, and that's part of the cultural element and nuances that you learn about in the program.
Mm-hmm. And and Lotte, is there anything you wanted to add on that one?
Very briefly, that of course there's a plethora of topics. What we do is we have key themes, and some of them really well talks to these trends. So sustainable inclusive growth with Asia and technology transformation with Asia are perhaps the ones that map most clearly onto this. And the geopolitics due to strategic issues we definitely cover. Rob, over to you again.
A few more coming through, but there's a question around, I guess, the benefits of the program for people when it comes to their career development, which I know is obviously a really important thing. Ken, not asking you to go into any sort of details or specifics, but would you say overall that the program had a sort of a clear and tangible benefit on your career progression?
It's definitely shaped where I am today. If not for the program, I may not be here in Singapore right now, and I may not have taken some of the choices that I've made to get to where I am. So I think from a career point of view, it's something that can really guide you to a different place that you may not have gone if you hadn't taken up the opportunity.
Yeah. Lotte, have you seen other sort of graduates of the program go on to bigger and better things?
We have, but not to overpromise. Not everyone wants that, of course. Some people are just looking to deepen their expertise. But with the 1,200 alumni, there are hundreds of stories of people having taken the next step or having had the connections or the visibility of opportunities or on themselves to make the change they would like to make. Many people come into the program to fuel their own work and make sure that they're across key pieces in their portfolio or ambition. But in fact, they find that what happens is that they start uncovering what they didn't know. And as they share that with their network, then they become the go-to person for these conversations on Asia. So it seems to have this sort of virtuous circle effect on people who join the program. And I would say that it is very much about what people come in with. And many people use their strategic project to advance what it is that they want to change for themselves.
We have had some more questions come in, but I'm also very determined that we keep this session to time. So look, if you do have more questions, either about the trends survey that we shared or about the Leaders Program, do get in touch. We love to hear from all of you. Lotte, I might pass back to you to wrap us up.
Will do. Thank you very much. What remains for me to say is, of course, a big thank you to Ken Uy for joining us from Singapore to provide his own personal perspective and experiences on Asia and the Asialink Leaders Program. We very much appreciate you all joining us today. And this is where we leave you with a slide and a QR code to find out more about the program. And you'll also hear from us both about the report and the program so that you know where to go next should you wish to delve in deeper. And with that, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to close this half hour exactly on time, and I'm going to close it with a slight taste of the Asialink Leaders Program brought to you by this video. So enjoy staying with us. Thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you soon.